Samuel Alito sat high upon the bench, draped in the black robe that had for decades symbolized ultimate authority. The courtroom was silent but charged, as though every breath taken by the audience echoed off the stone walls. Yet, amid that gravity, there it was, a smirk. It wasn't the broad grin of confidence, nor the chuckle of amusement, but a deliberate, calculated curl at the corner of his mouth. Subtle enough to be deniable, but visible enough to be noticed. It was a smirk that seemed to say, "This is beneath me, this is predictable, this will not matter." Jasmine Crockett, however, was not the type to be dismissed. The Congresswoman rose slowly, every movement deliberate, as if she knew the entire country was watching. Her shoulders squared, her gaze direct, and her voice steady yet simmering with restrained fire. "With all due respect," she began, though her tone suggested her respect had long since been exhausted, "this chamber was not built to host smirks. It was built to host justice." A ripple moved through the gallery. Some tilted forward, sensing something unusual was about to happen. Crockett's words did not waver, they cut through the air with precision. She laid out facts like a surgeon arranging instruments, the rulings that had contradicted precedent, the language that had stripped away protections, the decisions that had leaned so heavily in one direction they tipped the scales entirely. She spoke not just as a lawmaker, but as a woman who had lived through the policies those in black robes treated as abstractions. The smirk on Alito's face did not fade, it tightened, as though he was doubling down. But what he hadn't anticipated was that Crockett wasn't aiming for him alone, she was speaking to everyone in that room, and far beyond it. "You may sit there," she said, her eyes fixed on the bench, "with the comfort of lifetime appointment, with the shield of a robe that protects you from consequence. But let me tell you something. The people outside these walls do not see robes. They see rulings. They see lives changed. They see their freedoms stripped. And no smirk can erase that truth." Gasps scattered through the courtroom. Reporters scribbled furiously, realizing they were witnessing a moment destined for headlines. Even those who disagreed with her felt the weight of her conviction. It was the kind of raw honesty that broke through partisan walls, the kind of truth spoken not for applause but for posterity. Crockett's voice rose, not in anger, but in force. "This nation has fought too hard and bled too deeply for its justice to be reduced to smirks and shrugs. If you think this seat shields you from accountability, remember this: history has a way of burning through marble and ink. What you decide here lives far beyond your robe. It lives in the veins of this country." By now, the smirk had faltered. Alito's jaw shifted, his eyes narrowing as if suddenly aware of just how exposed he had become. Crockett pressed forward, her words unrelenting, her tone the embodiment of steel wrapped in velvet. "Every child forced to grow up with fewer rights than their parents, every family that feels the weight of injustice, every voter who wonders if their voice still matters, they will not forget. You may not hear them in this chamber, but their silence is louder than any gavel strike." The gallery erupted into murmurs, some gasped, some clapped before quickly being hushed by security. Crockett stood firm, her hands steady on the podium, her gaze unwavering. She wasn't just delivering a statement, she was delivering a reckoning. The courtroom, normally a cathedral of restrained formality, was suddenly alive, buzzing, transformed into an arena where truth wrestled with power. And then, as her final words echoed off the marble walls, the weight of the moment settled like a storm breaking. "So smirk if you must. But understand this: one day, history will look back at this bench, and it will not remember your smirk. It will remember the silence you kept and the justice you denied." For the first time that day, Samuel Alito's expression shifted, not into anger, not into laughter, but into something closer to discomfort. His smirk, that subtle show of superiority, had been dismantled not with shouting, but with truth. Crockett sat back down, her voice still ringing in the ears of everyone present. And in that instant, the courtroom was not just shaken, it was forever changed. Donald Trump had always thrived in chaos. He fed on interruptions, on cutting people off mid-sentence, on making himself the loudest voice in the room. It was his brand, his weapon, and his comfort zone. So when he stepped onto the stage across from former President Barack Obama in a highly anticipated televised forum, the audience already expected sparks. But no one could have predicted just how quickly the spectacle would unravel. The moderator barely finished the opening before Trump leaned forward, wagging his finger in Obama's direction. "Wrong, totally wrong," he blurted, not even waiting for a full sentence to leave his opponent's lips. Obama, calm as ever, paused. He had weathered storms before. He gave Trump a patient glance, as though waiting for a child's tantrum to burn itself out. But Trump didn't stop. The second interruption came like a wave crashing against stone. "That's fake, Barack, everybody knows it," Trump shouted, jabbing at the air with his hand. The audience shifted in their seats, some chuckling nervously, others wincing at the brazen breach of decorum. Still, Obama did not react. His silence was not weakness, it was strategy. He knew that sometimes the best rebuttal to noise was patience. By the third interruption, a low groan emerged from the crowd. The moderator raised his hand, attempting to restore order, but Trump bulldozed ahead. "Don't even try to finish. You're lying. Everybody knows you're lying." His words tumbled over Obama's steady cadence, like static drowning out a song. Yet Obama's eyes never lost their focus, his hands rested lightly on the lectern, his composure intact. The fourth interruption escalated. Trump stood taller, his voice rising. "You ruined this country, and I fixed it. Everyone knows it. Don't even try to." But before he could finish, the audience erupted in murmurs, some shaking their heads. Obama inhaled slowly, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his lips, as if he were allowing Trump all the rope he needed. By the fifth and sixth interruptions, the tension became unbearable. The moderator looked helpless, journalists in the front row exchanged glances, and the crowd's discomfort turned to frustration. "Let him speak," someone called from the back. But Trump plowed ahead, leaning over the lectern, cutting across Obama like an unstoppable current. His interruptions were no longer attacks, they were desperation, flailing attempts to control the moment. And then came the seventh. Trump, red-faced and breathless from his own barrage, shouted over Obama once again, his voice cracking under the strain. "You don't know what you're talking about, Barack. You were the worst president." Obama moved then, not with volume, but with precision. He raised his hand, not to silence Trump, but to reclaim the room. His voice was calm, unhurried, and carried the authority of someone who didn't need to shout to be heard. "Donald," he said evenly, pausing just long enough for the name to hang in the air, "every time you interrupt me, you prove that you're afraid of what I have to say." The words landed like a thunderclap. The entire hall froze. For the first time all night, Trump's voice caught in his throat. The audience, who had been restless and uneasy, now erupted into thunderous applause that rolled through the auditorium like an earthquake. Cameras zoomed in, capturing the split-second flicker of shock on Trump's face, the way his jaw tightened and his hands twitched as if reaching for a comeback that never came. Obama didn't gloat, he didn't smirk, he simply leaned back, composed and steady, his silence now louder than Trump's shouting had ever been. The audience's clapping turned into a standing ovation, echoing through the room. Trump blinked rapidly, his lips parting, searching for a line to reclaim the momentum. But nothing came. The man who prided himself on never being silenced, never being cornered, had been undone not by insults, not by force, but by a single, measured sentence. The moderator, relieved, attempted to regain order, but the balance of the night had already shifted. Obama had seized the stage not with noise, but with calm authority. His words lingered in the air like smoke from a cannon shot, impossible to ignore. The narrative had flipped. What began as Trump's relentless assault ended as his defeat, delivered by patience, poise, and precision. As the applause finally died down, Obama lowered his gaze to his notes and continued, unbothered, as though nothing had happened. Trump, meanwhile, stood rigid, a man unaccustomed to silence, forced into it by the sheer weight of another's composure. It wasn't just a debate anymore, it was a lesson etched in real time. And as millions watched from their living rooms, they knew they had seen more than an exchange of words. They had seen the power of discipline over chaos, the triumph of calm over bluster. Trump had tried 6 times to silence Barack Obama, but on the 7th, it was Obama who silenced him, and the echo of that line would carry far beyond that stage, etched into the memory of a nation.